I don't think we should have a draft. I think mandating either national service or a draft is a very Russian idea. And I don't like that. I don't think that we should have anything like that. I'm not a fan of it. I don't think it's a conservative or a constitutional idea at all whatsoever. The end. Because it's not. It's not.
Nor do we need it.
Nor do we need it. That's the other thing. I mean, the only time that you would even need something like this is what? If you're getting ready to, are they anticipating a giant ground war somewhere?
The party that's been defunding the military?
Yeah, defunding the military and defunding police. But let's make everybody be in the military. They want to attach this to the National Defense Authorization Act. It's a defense policy bill. It's considered a must-pass by Congress. And so they want to change selective service by attaching it to this. Now, the language that Reed's attaching would, and he's a Democrat from Rhode Island, it would expand registration for service to all Americans, striking explicit references to males. It's expected to be considered during committee markup this week. Floor action on the bill actually probably won't happen until later this year. So, as you know, men have to register for service when they turn 18 for potential conscription, although nobody has been drafted for more than 4 decades. The last time there were 2 people, Chuck Schumer and Chris Dodd, that had been in support of a draft previously. And this was something, I was in college when they were going back and forth over this. But right now the Pentagon opened combat roles to women in 2015. And I look, I can argue both sides of this. I don't, but here's the thing. I think a draft is unconstitutional. I think it is one of the most statist things that's out there. Here's the thing. Like I said, I can argue both sides of this. And it's very easy to sit here and say, well, hey, women, hey, ladies, you thought that masculinity was so toxic. Go out there and dilute the toxicity. You wanted to participate in combat roles, but you didn't feel like you thought you were too special to sign up for conscription? Well, here you go. Equality. And I get that argument. But that's not my position, is that I think the draft, period. Let's just not have a draft. But Dana, what happens if I don't do hypotheticals? And I have more than one way of saying this. I don't do hypotheticals. And I do think that it's unconstitutional. The Supreme Court actually back in June, they declined to hear a case that was brought over by the National Coalition for Men challenging the male-only draft. I don't think countries should send their women to war. I don't think countries should mandate and conscript forcefully people into service. I don't believe in mandatory national service. That is not a conservative idea. I've had a number of conservatives suggest that to me. They've said, well, what we should do is have a national service that everyone has to register for. That's that'll teach people to be responsible. Are you a conservative? Because how is outsourcing parental duty to the government and expecting the government to raise you in a form of national service in any way even remotely a constitutional idea, much less a conservative one? Whenever you're appealing to the government to solve an issue, it ceases to be a conservative or constitutional principle if it is outside of Article 1, Section 8, and even your state's constitution. So that's a thing. That's a big thing. This actually won some support. There were, I guess you could call it bipartisan, from the Armed Services Committee at the time. Half the panel's GOP members sided with Democrats against a conservative effort to strip the language. We'll see what happens with this, but I don't really see there being any kind of, I don't really see that there's any kind of move on this until later this year. But it is, why not just don't have a draft? Here's one more thing on this issue. Because people say, well, we need to make sure that, if the country is ever in, if we're ever in a critical position and we need people to serve, you know what, if we had virtuous people, and it is not, I absolutely refuse to make the young, because let's be honest, all these old people who sit over the table like a bunch of damn cocktail shrimp arguing what everybody's going to do with their sons and daughters, sitting here sending them out to war or conscript them, into something else. all these people, they're not the ones paying the price for this. And I think it is absolutely heinous for those individuals who are more responsible for the state of our government to demand that the younger people who are less responsible for the state of our government serve the penalty for the current state of government. A successful country, war is always a last option. It's always a last option. And so if we had a virtuous people from which to elect virtuous representatives to send to D.C., where we could, a pool of virtuous people from which we could select virtuous leaders, I would say that we would have less a problem with people volunteering and putting lives on the line and going and doing their duty. But I guarantee you, you're not going to get that as long as you have wokery in the military. If you're sitting here talking about pronouns instead of military preparedness, if you're discussing how to keep everyone's individual identity instead of stripping everything away and making people part of one, then you cannot be expected, people, to joyfully and voluntarily put everything on the line to join something like that. And maybe everybody ought to be thinking about it. I'm against nation building, and I'm against anything that is not about protecting. I'm not anti-war. I'm anti-stupid war. I'm anti-stupid strategy. I'm anti-no strategy. There's a big difference. It's always a last resort. And when it's a last resort, the hammer should fall, leaving nothing but ash. And that's the deterrent.